Starting out this video with the retrieval of a speckled trout by the host of this trip. You see it there being poured in on the left side of the boat. This trip was into Florida Bay, leaving out of Flamingo and Everglades National Park. I'll tell y'all in a little while how I happened to end up on this trip. Here I am pulling in a ladyfish using live shrimp. Fishing with Jason and with John, boat owner and host. We left out of Flamingo, headed on down into Florida Bay, and stopped at one of John's spots on our channel. Started fishing with live shrimp underneath a popping cork, and we caught a variety of fish: jack crevelles, speckled trout, mangrove snapper, and ladyfish. You saw me catch one as the video was starting out. A lot of grass out there. The harbor at Flamingo was full of grass, floating grass, but anyhow, all we were doing at this location was feeding the fish. So we picked up and moved quite a bit south. Matter of fact, so far south we were outside of the park boundary. Here you see Jason has caught a large houndfish, and I was offering my hook remover to get the hook out. John went ahead and used some fisherman's pliers. We moved to this spot, and again, like I said, it was outside of the park boundary, quite a good ways south, after fishing for probably about 45 minutes at the other location. And we set up here and set out a chum bag, and after a while it was like fishing for fish in a bathtub. We had, I don't know how many snappers, mangrove snappers, yellowtail snappers, just a little bit of everything. A few species of trash fish in there too, but just all kinds of fish. And the action was basically non-stop for several hours. As you continue to watch the fishing action, I'll tell you how I ended up on this trip. I stopped for fuel on my last trip into Whitewater Bay, and as I was checking out with the cashier, the fella that had been in front of me looked kind of familiar, so I walked up to him at the gas pumps, introduced myself, and sure enough, John used to be actively involved with the youth group, and his fishing partner of the day used to be a member of the church also. We exchanged phone numbers, and John told me that he wanted to take me out and show me the ins and outs of Florida Bay, so we've been working at trying to hook up, and we were able to make it on this particular Saturday. Even though the weather had been horrible for the 7 days prior, with lots of rain falling in South Florida, and the forecast not looking much better for this Saturday, we decided we'd go. And it ended up being an excellent day. It was overcast for probably 80% of the time that we were on the water. Although it looked like it could storm on numerous occasions, it did not. I did end up with a nice tan on my face from not wearing a suntan lotion. I was with two fellows that were a lot smarter. They were wearing face masks. I'm sure their skin looked a lot better when they got off the boat than mine did, but anyhow, that's how I ended up on this trip, and I'm really appreciative that John invited me along and showed me some of the ins and outs of Florida Bay. John was fishing out of the bow of the boat, and I feel bad that I didn't get very much action of his, almost none, in this video. It's primarily Jason and I. We were fishing in the back. When I've got a fishing rod in hand, I'm pretty much in a zone, and on this trip, since I wasn't captain of the boat, I really wasn't paying attention to a whole lot else that was going on around me, like I am when I'm in my boat. And for that, I apologize, John, because I think I kind of neglected you in the videos. And we did have a contest going, or at least I guess you could call it a contest as to who could catch the most trash fish. I don't consider a ladyfish a trash fish. It is a fun fight. So I guess I really lost that little gentleman's bet. I don't recall what those trash fish were. Probably the houndfish. I know there was a puffer fish that was caught during the day, I believe at this location. But for the most part, we were catching quality fish. The chum line was established. We had a tremendous number of fish behind the boat. Like I said, John was fishing out of the bow. Jason fishing right where he is there. He was almost over top of the schools that were developing around the chum line. He did catch the most fish of the day. I'm quite sure of it. I really couldn't tell you, but from the video clips going through them, I saw his name popping up a lot more with the fish caught than mine were. And John was just letting us have a good time, and I really appreciate that. We eventually went through 3 blocks of chum at this location, and after a while we decided we would call it quits and try to save some time and maybe go back to the location where we started at in the beginning. And John was pointing out some of the area here is where we were in relationship to the Keys. Off in the distance to the east, we could see some of the bridges and islands of the Florida Keys. It wasn't long after I got this last fish in here that we turned back north. As you can see, the water was relatively calm. A lot of floating patches of grass. And I wanted to show you what it's like when you're running through one of these channels that cuts in between the flats. You see these stakes that indicate where the channel is and what side of the stake you need to be on. But we got back up to our first fishing location, and it wasn't long before Jason was pulling in snappers again. Again, using live shrimp under a popping cork. So while Jason was working the bow of the boat, John and I were working the stern, and we finally got a video clip of John with a fish. You didn't see him retrieve it, but he did. Nice speckled trout. I believe this one was a little over 18. This was the second keeper speckled trout of the day. And I'm pulling in one right there on an artificial. It was getting on into the day. John's having a little bit of fun with a trout. Look at the fangs in the top of his mouth and that beautiful yellow throat. Well, I ended up changing location with Jason. I went up to the bow and started fan casting with a new lure which I had picked up. It was a Z-Man Elastec, I believe is what it's called, lure. And if I remember correctly, this was a Houdini paddle tail 4-inch. I was really impressed with what this lure could do. You see me with a Jack Crevelle here. Jason grabbed the camera and became my cameraman. This lure, the material that the plastic is made out of, has a real stretchy, elastic quality to it. I watch a show on TV called Flats Class. C.A. Richardson hosts it. Fishes all over Florida, and Z-Man Lures is one of his sponsors, so obviously he has to tout the lures, and he has been praising these Z-Man Lures on his shows for quite a few episodes now, so I wanted to give it a try. I went over to Bass Pro and picked some up and got my first use out of them, and I must say that I'm impressed. Held up very well to jacks, speckleds. I believe I even caught a yellowtail on one at the previous location, and ladyfish. And this lure still was not tore up. The exit hole for the lure, or for the jig, the hook, might have been stretched just a hair, but where other soft plastics would have gotten bitten off by the fish, this was still fully intact and had a really nice swimming tail action in the water. Just continuing to fan cast over this area with the lure. You see me catch a couple jacks already. There's another hookup. I believe this is a ladyfish here, the way it's acting on top of the water. I just have a love of fishing with artificial lures. I know that natural baits will generally outfish artificial. It's just something about teasing a fish with something that's man-made, artificial in nature. And the ability to just make rapid cast, hard cast if necessary, really slinging a bait out there to cover a wide area, which oftentimes you cannot do with a natural bait because it'll just sling it right off the hook. It's not to say that I don't like fishing with natural baits, because I do that on occasion. But I like to mix it up, and that's what I was doing on this trip. I'd fish with a shrimp for a while, then I kept this rod set up with the artificial, and then I'd switch over to it. Here I am with another Jack Crevelle. Really like catching these fish. They are very strong fighting fish for their size. Loads of fun. It's all catch and release, but they are really fun to catch. I still can't believe how that lure held up from all these fish that were hitting it. This clip shows that you don't have to be that far away from the boat to catch fish. This little speckled trout hit the lure probably not more than 20 feet from the boat. It was starting to get late in the day. When we arrived at this spot, we figured we had 30 minutes to fish so that we could get back into the marina, get loaded up, and get back home at a decent time. So I told John needed one more cast, which he obliged, and I hooked into a ladyfish. Really want to thank you, John, for inviting me to come along on this trip, for playing the gracious host that you did, for showing me Florida Bay in a way that I'm pretty sure now I can, for the most part, keep my boat from going aground. After this cast, we headed back in to a grass clogged harbor on the bay side of Flamingo and got eaten alive by mosquitoes as we retrieved the boat, got it on the trailer. All in all, it was a fantastic day of fishing. The weather held off. It looked gloomy a couple times, but no heavy winds. Matter of fact, the winds died down towards the late afternoon, and no rain at all. I want to thank you all for coming along, for joining us, and as always, wishing everybody bent rods and tight lines.